Education station, Manx Radio.
This is the Mannin Line on location.
PACT Mike, good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. Next week is Mental Health Awareness Week. We all have mental health. Some people have poor mental health. Some people appear to be brilliant in their mental health. Well, in the next hour, we're going to be talking to people from I'll Listen, from the Samaritans, also from I'll Stand Up to Suicide. The Isle of Man FA have a representative here as well, and Manx PACT. So have a listen, see what you think. Remember, it's next week, so we're warming up for the big event. Live on Mannin Line today, live in Castletown. First of all, by the way, I must say thank you to our friends at Ramsey Crookall facilitating this. They're sponsoring the entire mental health awareness campaign on Manx Radio next week. You'll hear messages throughout the day. Andrea Chambers is the chief exec of I'll Listen. We've heard about I'll Listen. Andrea, what's it about and what does Mental Health Awareness Week mean to you?
So I'll Listen was set up, about 5 years ago now, when we looked around for how we could use our skills with supporting people with their mental health that we've previously done with people affected by cancer, and how we could find a gap in the market that nobody else was doing and that we knew we could do. And it wasn't difficult to find a gap in support and provision of early intervention and mental health support for our young people. And that's what we've developed over the last 5 years. And we have a service in schools and also a therapeutic service and services also into the workplace. So we're very proud of I'll Listen.
Okay, so you've come quite a way in the past few years.
Yeah, we have, yeah. I think when the first idea we had was when there was a team of 5 of us at Manx Cancer Help, and we thought, can we do this? Now 5 years later, there are 32 of us, and the need, I think, for the service that we're providing has grown more than we ever thought it would. So Mental Health Awareness Week is really important to us.
Okay, Mike Nudd's here from Samaritans. Mike, everyone has heard of Samaritans. Everybody knows, what Samaritans do. But does everybody realise what Samaritans do?
I'd like to think so, but I'm sure it's not the case. I think there's a bit of a misconception about Samaritans that to contact us you have to be suicidal. That is not the case. We are a support organisation to provide emotional support to people who are going through distress and despair and are not in a good place. And a lot of our callers do have mental health issues and challenges which takes them into these situations.
Samaritans been around for ages.
Samaritans started in 1953 in the UK. On the Isle of Man, we've been here since 1979.
And what drew you to Samaritans?
Me personally, if I'm perfectly honest, there was 2 reasons. One, I did use Samaritans when I first came to the island, and I found them very supportive. And the second reason is my wife is also a Samaritan, and because of her experiences and passion for Samaritans, I decided to join. And I've been a volunteer for about 15 years now.
What would be the main barrier to somebody contacting Samaritans?
I think, again, a bit of a misconception that to contact Samaritans, from the Isle of Man perspective, is that you're going to speak to somebody on the Isle of Man. That's not necessarily the case. We're part of the broader organisation right across the UK. So anybody contacting Samaritans, when they do ring Samaritans, they could speak to anybody in any part of the UK. So that anonymity remains, which is very important, and the confidentiality. I think there is this preconception that they have to be suicidal to contact us, and as I said, that is not the case.
I mean, do you have people contacting you saying, this may sound silly, but?
Very much so. And what is stressful to one person may not be stressful to another. Everybody has their own perceptions on their own mental health, mental well-being, and what is bothering them. So they contact us, and we listen. We don't give advice, we don't give solutions, we just listen. And by listening to them and talking to them and exploring options for them, sometimes they go away thinking, actually, that's not so bad.
Lynsey Wood's here from I'll Listen. Lynsey, what's your role?
I'm a qualified psychotherapist, so I work predominantly with children and adolescents.
And are there main thrusts, are there main issues with children, with adolescents? Do they fall into any particular categories?
I think from the work that I do and our team does within schools, I think some of the main sort of reasons why we get referrals through, there's a really high proportion of young people who are engaging in self-harm activities for various reasons. A lot of young children are having difficulties within families, so family conflict and breakdown in relationships with family members, and also bullying. We're seeing a lot of young people that are coming to us because they're struggling with issues around bullying.
Social media must play a part.
It does, and I think we can't really sort of get away from the fact that it does impact on everybody's lives. I think for young people, they've grown up in an era of social media, and sometimes it's difficult for them to realise what's reality and what's actually put out on social media. And you'll always see the more positive aspects of things on social media. It's not necessarily real life, but trying to then adhere to those conceptions and live up to those expectations can be really difficult for young people.
What would you say, I'm talking about the resilience of young children now, and young people are remarkably resilient. When something's reported, it's not necessarily bad. You have to go through the journey, yeah? You
do. And, you know, as we've said before, mental health is something that we all struggle with at some point in our lives, and it is a very subjective matter. What is, you know, difficult for one person isn't difficult for another potentially. But the important thing is actually that people reach out for help and support when they need it and feel that they can do that, and that there are services there to be able to provide that support.
Okay, Ali Vond is here from I'll Stand Up to Suicide. Ali, and you're also, I think you've got two hats today. You also represent the Isle of Man FA, is that right?
I have, yes. I'm a co-founder with Paula Dunlop for I'll Stand Up to Suicide on the Isle of Man, which is a suicide prevention, intervention and education charity. But I'm also Director of Health and Wellbeing for the Isle of Man FA, which is very appropriate because the theme for Mental Health Awareness Week this year is movement, and of course the FA are into physical activity and movement, so it's very appropriate for us.
Well, we'll come to football later, but first of all, I'll stand up to suicide. Suicide was something you just didn't talk about at one time. Taking one's own life was, I mean, years ago it was a crime to take your own life. So what drew you to this?
Okay, for me personally, I had experience of friends, colleagues, people I was aware of who had taken their own lives. I have another hat. I'm also a mental health first aid instructor, so I come into contact often with people who are struggling with their mental health, or people who want to train to help others with their mental health. So I was seeing a lot that there were issues around suicide, and particularly issues around suicide and high suicide rates on the Isle of Man.
Most people say probably most people do know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who's taken their own life, and the most common thing said is they didn't seem that sort of person.
Yeah, I think that's one of the crucial things about suicide. Still waters run deep. Absolutely, still waters run deep. And you cannot always spot the signs, but I know certainly in my case, I wish I had acted on the signs that I saw. But I think,
were they relevant to you at the time? Did you understand that was a pointer?
Well, for my friend, yes. A lot of us knew that he wanted to take his own life, but I think many people can think it's not my business, I don't want to interfere, I don't have the skills, I don't know what to say, somebody else should do it or whatever. And so when my friend took his own life, I was left well, you can only imagine how I was left feeling. Guilty, bereft, I wish, I should have, could I have. And so for me, it was very much about arming myself with the skills to know what to do. If there are signs, and sometimes people take their own lives and really they don't show any signs, but often in hindsight, people can see signs. So it's for me and for our piece within I'll Stand Up to Suicide, it's offering training to people so that they can spot those signs, the kind of subtle things that people may say, the subtle way people may act when they're thinking about suicide, and also having the confidence to ask that question. Are you thinking of harming yourself, or are you thinking of taking your own life?
You say there's a higher rate of suicide on the Isle of Man. Could you expand on that?
Yeah, there's been, I think, Andrea might be able to correct me, 157 suicides between 2017 and 2021. That, you know, anecdotally, suicide rates are very hard to pinpoint, and people are very reluctant to put suicide rates into the public domain. But we are counting suicides now on the Isle of Man quite accurately. And so, as you said before, if that one suicide affects on average between 135 and 150 other people, if you extrapolate that out in our small population of 85,000, then that's a lot of people affected.
Do you still feel guilty about that friend of yours?
Yes and no. Yes, I will always wish that I had intervened, but I did not have the skills to do that then. So for me, it was about arming myself with the skills and making sure that I would never be in that position again. And then once I knew those skills, for me, it was an education piece in helping other people to then share those skills with others.
Okay, Juan Moore's here from Manx PACT. It's called Manx PACT, yes?
Manx PACT, that's right, yes.
What is Manx PACT?
So Manx PACT is Manx people actioning change together. I had my own mental health difficulties. I was feeling suicidal for probably years, and it came to the point where I broke down in work. When I went to the doctor, I was told that there was very little help that was available. There was a 2-year waiting list. And
when was this, Juan?
This was about 3 years ago now. And so I saw there was no, there was 2-year waiting list. There was very little help. I was told to have a look at Anxiety UK, and at that stage I didn't even realise I had anxiety. And I was sat there thinking, well, this has been a complete waste of time, and I just wanted to go off and, well, not come back. But anyway, as I went to the door, the doctor said, I want to see you in 2 weeks' time, and that was what stopped me from carrying out what my plans were. But I don't want anyone to be in that position again. So as I've been recovering, I wanted to set up a support group for people who were struggling with their mental health. So Manx PACT came into being August last year, and it's set up for people who are having difficulties, for their friends and family as well, because it's very difficult for them, and for anyone else who wants to learn more about mental health and well-being.
And how are you feeling now, Juan?
If I'm honest, I still feel suicidal every day. There's not a day goes by when I don't think of that, but I'm learning to deal with it a bit better. Last month, I had a bad month last month, and I'm just getting over another bad period this week. So, but yes, it goes up and down, but there is hope, and I can look back at how I was feeling, say, 3 years ago, and I can see how far I've come. But yeah, when those thoughts sort of take hold, they're very, very difficult.
Well, the mind is very, very powerful.
Yes.
You must, I mean, your inner battles. Walking down the street, nobody'd notice it. People would walk up the street.
Absolutely.
So nobody knows what...
No, that's right.
And what battles you have.
Yeah, and it was like Ali was saying, no one would have known that I was struggling and I was hiding everything. I was going to work, and there was times when I was going out at dinner time and I just didn't want to come back. And no, those thoughts I was thinking what I could do. I've made plans more than once, and no one would have known. I literally did hide it from everyone. So yeah, it would have come as a surprise. And because of the stigma, it makes it very, very difficult for people to speak out. So people in my situation find it very difficult. And as we've already talked about here, it's difficult for people to start a conversation. So imagine how much harder it is for the individual who's feeling it, who fears, well, they may lose their job. All these people may judge them. So we need to sort of crack that and break.
Yeah, Ali?
I'm just wondering, Jane, did anybody ever ask you, were you okay?
No, and if they did, I would have said, no, I'm fine.
Well, I was just going to say that, Juan, because part of the issue sometimes is, so I'm not, wanting to put myself in your shoes, but just to think, well, if somebody asks you if you're okay, you think, well, what's it going to do with you? Don't be so nosy.
No. So I say no. Many years ago, when I was at university, there was someone who said, "You're not okay, Juan, let's speak." He left the room, and then I ended up bursting in tears because that was someone who'd noticed and cared. Right. And no, that hadn't happened since. But I set up a wellbeing committee at the Law Society, and I was arranging all the wellbeing events, and at the same time I was the one who was hiding all my problems, and that was very difficult for me. And if anyone said, "How are you?" then I felt I would have had to hide it because I feared I might have ended up losing my job or whatever might have happened. Yeah.
Okay. Ste down with us here, also from I'll Listen. What's your role at I'll Listen, Ste?
So I'm the school's team lead. So I lead a team of 10, which consists of 5 wellbeing practitioners, 3 wellbeing facilitators, and 2 therapists. And what we do in schools is we started as an early intervention initiative. So the aim was very much low-level concerns and worries to stop them escalating into more severe things. But as the years have gone on, that severity has increased massively. So the work we do is our wellbeing facilitators go in and they do educational sessions. So it could be an assembly, it could be in a tutor time in school, it could be PSHE, which is designated classroom time. So that's for people, that's for all the schools in the sense of, it doesn't mean that someone's necessarily said, I need support. It's that tools and techniques to equip people, because we all know young people have ups and downs so they can manage them emotions. And then our practitioners do our one-to-one work in schools. So that's usually 4 to 6 sessions, one-to-one, get referral and review that and work with that young person. And then Lynsey, as well as another therapist, are part of the team now because we've realised that we actually need that expertise that can operate at a higher level to our practitioners, because the severity of issues and concerns we're seeing has grown.
What sort of issues?
We see, as Lynsey mentioned, we see a lot of self-harm, suicidal thought.
Okay, with that being too graphic, what sort of self-harm?
It's when someone harms themselves, so it could be scratching, burning, cutting. It could manifest in the way of withdrawing food from ourselves, eating too much, anything that can cause harm to us. And one of the misconceptions is I think that people do that for attention. However, with this, it can actually be a way of coping with these emotions, that release of difficult emotions that they're facing at that time. We see family issues, we see abuse, exploitation, as well as them low-level issues as well. It could be young people that aren't getting on, bullying, issues that generate from phones in schools. The list goes on. What's
the youngest person you've seen?
So we currently work with year 3 up. So year 3 is around 7 years old. However, over the last 6 to 12 months, we're seeing referrals come through with kids as young as 4 and 5.
You see, a lot of people will find that unthinkable.
Yep.
That 4 or 5 year olds could manifest symptoms like that.
Absolutely. And when I joined over 3 years ago, we didn't see this. We did see more of them low-level concerns. So as the service has grown, we get more questions from parents, from teachers to expand this service. So not only is the severity, the number of referrals, but as you said, young people now that you'd expect to, be okay are really struggling now, and we see referrals for that.
And what about exploitative stuff that's going on? Obviously, social media, we hear, I know because we take the programme into schools and talk to young people, they know the people that hang around at school gates, they know the people who offer vapes and cigarettes and alcohol to children, and there are some very vulnerable children out there.
Absolutely, and I think...
And the other thing is, it is not necessarily people at the low end of the socio-economic scale.
Yeah, and I think we all have mental health, and it's different for everyone, and we don't really have one situation that means a young person is going to struggle with their mental health. You know, they could be brought up perfectly well by their parents but still struggle with their mental health, or they could have quite challenging home lives, which is, you know, maybe made them feel a little bit that they need support. But with regard to that vulnerability, you know, if a young person is in that position and, you know, opportunities arise, sometimes they make that decision to get involved.
Okay, I just want to come to Mike Nutt again from Samaritans. Mike, and I've mentioned it a couple of times about this. This goes right across the socio-economic scale, from those reclusive billionaires in Bride to people living in social housing all over the Isle of Man. Depression, mental health problems don't respect wealth or position, do they?
Absolutely not. It could be anybody, and the calls we get from our calls could be anyone across the spectrum. We have, and when I say spectrum, I mean the spectrum of social, not mental health spectrum. It could be anybody. We get calls from kids, we get calls from children, we get calls from males, females, whatever, you know, right across the social groups. It's not a respecter of anything.
How do you identify the core problem of the caller? How do you, I mean, do you just listen, or do you try and move them on?
No, we listen. That's our main thing. We'd rather have them talking than us listening. We will, as I say, we'll explore options. We'll try and get to the depth of their despair. We'll pick the stones up and see what crawls out by just asking appropriate questions. There's no time limit. If they need an hour, we give them an hour. If they need 2 hours, we give them 2 hours. We'll give them as much time as they need. We're not a chat line, so we need to manage it, but we do manage it appropriately. We will always explore whether or not the caller is having any suicidal thoughts or suicidal feelings, because that gauges the depth of their despair and where they are. And in appropriate situations, we may, if it falls within our safeguarding policy, we may look to intervene. But our safeguarding policy covers children and vulnerable adults. So in those situations, we may look to intervene.
And on the Isle of Man, preserving anonymity is upmost in lots of people's thoughts. How do you do that?
Well, we do not know who the caller is, where the caller's calling from. The numbers don't come up, the calls are not recorded, we have no idea. They don't know that we're in the Isle of Man unless they ask us. If we get to the situation where we may have what we feel is a safeguarding issue, which could be a vulnerable adult or a child, then we may explore getting what we call identifiable information. What we would do with that with the consent of the caller.
How long have you been doing this?
Me, 15 years.
15 years. Has the nature of the calls changed at all?
No, I don't think so. I think it's fairly consistent. I think there are probably more males calling us these days, because I think historically it was the done thing from the male perspective that, you know, just get on with it, you know, don't talk about your emotions. It's not the done thing from a man's perspective. Whereas now, I think because of social media, because of all the focus on mental health, I think that's becoming more prevalent. We get a lot of calls from prisons and prisoners. During COVID, in particular, 20% of our calls came from the prisons. They were in lockdown for 23 out of 24 hours and no one to talk to. So they would talk to us. So we get calls from all walks of life. We get callers who, when they contact us, they don't want to burden their friends and family. And so they want to talk to us. We're independent, for want of a better expression, and they know that we're not going to go back and tell anybody else what's being said. There's that confidentiality aspect of it, but there is. We're also 24/7, which I think supports the services provided from a mental health perspective, who are not 24/7, and in some cases the mental health support will sometimes say, if you can't contact me, if I'm not available, Samaritans are available 24/7. So we're there at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and they're probably the worst times. They're lonely times. So when people call us in those hours, they're in real need.
Okay, Ali Vondi, let's talk about the Isle of Man FA. And you're the ambassador for, what was it again?
I'm the Director for Health and Wellbeing.
Okay, and where does the Isle of Man FA fit into this?
Well, certainly there's lots of activities that the Isle of Man FA do to try and promote wellbeing. Obviously, our primary focus is football, but certainly with the theme of Mental Health Awareness Week being movement for mental health, and one of the 5 ways to wellbeing is activity. So it's really important that people get active. There's walking football, there's girls football, there's disability football, there's a business league. So anybody from any walk of life, as well as the Premier League and all the other leagues that go on, anybody from any walk of life can get involved in football. And team sports are a really good way to meet other people, to get involved, and that is proven to be good for your mental health.
Ali, can you repair your mental health?
Oh, absolutely. Going back to what Juan said, my own journey and my own mental health began with postnatal depression after both of my children. When I had my first child, I was teaching at Andrea's school, and I knew in my head that I had postnatal depression. But when the health visitor came to check me out, I lied. So I identified very much with what Juan said. I ticked all those boxes to get that woman out of my house as quickly as
Ali,
possible.
why did you lie?
I lied because I had in my head, wrongly, may I add, parents of children in my class who would maybe say, that woman who used to teach our children, she's had a breakdown, or other people who I had maybe opened up to a little, saying that I was struggling, who had said, but you've got a beautiful child, you've got a beautiful home, you've got a beautiful, you don't need to worry about anything. But it was uncontrollable. My postnatal hormones were uncontrollable. And then after I had my second child, I finally went to the doctor, but there was a lot of fear, there was a lot of stigma. I feared the discrimination of people talking. And even after I'd been to the doctor the second time, my husband was very, very supportive. But even after I'd been to the doctor after my second child, and that was 4 years that I'd been struggling then. I still didn't come out and say to my friends and my family, oh, by the way, I've got postnatal depression and I'm on antidepressants, That wasn't something that I really started to share until I started my current job 6 or 7 years ago. And I think that is so important. The only way to tackle the discrimination and the stigma around mental health is to talk about it. The only way to tackle the stigma and the discrimination around suicide is to talk about it. It is a myth, a very well put out there myth, that if you talk to someone about suicide, for example, you will encourage them to do it. All the statistics show us that that is not true, that often people who are having suicidal thoughts are desperate for someone to notice them and desperate for someone to intervene and to ask them, are they okay? And to then maybe ask them again, are you really okay? And not to turn and walk away.
Okay, we're live in Castletown today with our good friends at Ramsey Crookall, because next week is Mental Health Awareness Week, and back in just a few moments.
Hello, I'd like to rent a car for 3 days. Just something reasonable.
No problem at all. We've just a few rules. You can't go off island, you can't smile in the car, you can't take any friends. Oh, and it's £10,000 a day.
Renting a car doesn't need to be difficult or expensive. With prices from just £50 per day, and now collection and drop-off at the airport and Douglas, speak to Rex Rental Company or book online at rexrental.im.
Rex Rentals. I'm so glad to hear that.
Would you consider leaving a gift in your will to Hospice Isle of Man? As a charity, we need to raise millions every year just to continue providing our services. Your support means that we can give our care to all those who need it, when they need it, completely free of charge. If you're considering making a will or adding a hospice donation to your will, please give us a call to find out more on 672222. Every penny raised makes a huge difference to every individual and family who needs us. Thank you.
The extended Ramsey Garden Centre is deceptively large. You'll find a warm welcome and everything from bedding and perennials, fruit and vegetables to lighting, garden ornaments, bird baths, bird tables and indoor and outdoor pots. Come and browse at Ramsey Garden Centre.
People of the Isle of Man, are you thinking of buying or selling a home? Well, wait! You need to talk to the conveyancing team at LVW Law. LVW Law! They've over 20 years of experience and know what they're talking about. They're friendly and efficient. Do not buy or sell a property without calling LVW Law on 836757 for a no-obligation quote. LVW Law.
This evening at 6, it'll be Charley.
Build a stairway to paradise.
You could, in theory, have 6 ladies singing for the Cleveland.
The apple orchard we wandered through.
Sing it out. Father happy, you feel inside.
Find out more this evening at 6 in Charley.
This is the Mannin Line on location.
We're at the the George Hotel in Castletown, in the south of the Isle of Man, with our good friends at Ramsey Crookall, talking about Mental Health Awareness Week next week, with Andrea Chambers and Ste Downward and Lynsey Woods here from Our Listen, Mike Nuds from the Samaritans, Ali Vondi with 2 hats, I'll Stand Up to Suicide and the Isle of Man FA, and Juan Morris here from Manx PACT. Manx PACT again is?
Manx People Action Change Together.
And you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on the discussion before the break. What we've been talking about is anyone can be affected by mental health illness, and what we need to remember is that once that's happened, it doesn't make that person incapable ever again. So one of the things that happened to me was when I started talking about it, I would have conversation with other people. One of the first things that someone said to me was, I'm glad that won't happen to me because I'm not that way inclined. And I was just thinking, well, this is the stigma that we're trying to get over. So if you just imagine it as someone's broken a leg and then they come back to work, they're still capable of carrying on with work. But with mental health, suddenly we think, oh no, we don't want to talk to that person. He's got mental health. He's scary. He's got depression. And you suddenly put up these barriers, and there's the stigma. And that's what we really have to break down.
How did you cope with that, Juan? Did you find friends you didn't know you had?
I found friends who stopped talking to me. But
is that true? Seriously?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's people who just don't want to talk to you anymore. So there was. But there were other people who were really good. My brother was brilliant. He came round to see me, and at the time my uncle was really ill, and so he was going to see my uncle and seeing me, and I was seeing my uncle as well at the same time, of course. But there are other people who just distance themselves, and they think, oh no, we can't deal with that.
How do you see your journey?
My journey's, well, I'm still going along that journey. At the moment, I mean, I've totally changed my career. So I went from working in the finance area to setting up my own business, and so I'm a consultant now, and I've still got the problems with my mental health, and it's getting used to taking the tablets that I need, remembering to take the ones when I'm feeling really bad to take them. But at the moment, it's just a recovery journey, and I'd love to get to the day where I just have one day where I don't think about suicide or wanting to die. And bad times I have, my sleep. I have nightmares. I have flashbacks during the day sometimes, and they can all be challenging. So I'm just sort of halfway along the journey, I would imagine.
Are you optimistic about how it's going to end?
I think I have to be, yes. Sorry, I was pausing there because I was thinking about Manx PACT and the support. Because one of the things we need to do is just to tell everyone that there is support there is help available, as indeed we've been talking about here. So there is that goal in sight. And what I want to get across to everyone on the Isle of Man is that if you are struggling, there's help. Go for the help, because it might be tough. The journey might be very tough, but it's worth it. And in the long term, then yes, there will be that goal to achieve.
Okay, Ali, briefly.
I think one of the things about the Isle of Man is that there is a huge amount of support out there for people, and getting that known. You know, there's I'll Listen, there's Cruise, there's I'll Stand Up to Suicide, there's the Samaritans, there's Victim Support, there's Motivate, and many, many others. But it's actually people knowing what is out there for them.
But often,
and communication is very difficult.
That could be an embarrassment of riches. People may look at that and just know what to do.
Yeah, I think that's very important, and I think we all, as charities and people, and I know we have contacts on our website. Listen have contacts on their website. It's about getting a registry out there that people really know, because not everybody goes to the doctors and lift things up. So it's just getting as much information. Information is power.
Okay, Lynsey?
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on a few things that Juan said. I think just having the courage of your conviction, really, to stand up and say, you know, things aren't good and I do need support. And that's why we go out to schools and we work with young people, so that actually we're equipping them with the tools and techniques. Talking about mental health just becomes second nature, so that actually we're not getting into adulthood and being adults who are scared to talk about our mental health. We're trying to get those conversations started as early as possible. And I know, as somebody who also struggles with the mental health and has done since a teenager, that's the whole reason I got into becoming a therapist, because I had, very fortunately, great support when I was sort of 15, 16 and going through very difficult times. And as a consequence, I then wanted to be able to provide that sort of support to young people in today's age.
How do you guard against putting the idea of suicide into a young person's head where it may not necessarily be? Somebody may be down.
You're not going to do that. As Ali said, by speaking about suicide, you're not going. Somebody is not suddenly going to say, "Oh, I think that's a good idea. That's what I'm going to do."
Genuinely?
Absolutely not. If somebody, we always ask in every contact we have with a young person, we always ask about risk of self-harm, and we always ask about the risk of suicide, because we would be doing a disservice if we didn't have those open, honest conversations. If we're telling people to be brave and have those open, honest conversations, and then we are not having them, that we can't possibly do that. And so we ask on every contact with a young person, you know, have you got thoughts of self-harm? Have you had thoughts of wanting to take your own life by suicide? And actually being that reassuring, safe, contained space that actually, if they want to and they feel able to be open and honest about that we can support them through that.
Andrea Chambers?
Yeah, just to follow up on what Lynsey said and what everyone's saying, which is a great conversation, this. One of the real positives that we've seen coming out of our Listen is that children or young people in schools now seek out our guys. They have become part of the school community, and they are okay to talk about their well-being and mental health. Well, what a great step forward that is for the Isle of Man if our young people are thinking about these things earlier on in life and not becoming poorly and lacking in the support that Juan has described.
Okay, Steve Downward.
And yeah, just on that, a lot of the more sort of serious and concerning things that young people divulge to us is often the first time they've told anyone whatsoever. So what's really good is, whilst it's sad that they have to tell us that, it's great that we can be there in schools to hear that information, and then we take that information. Obviously we have a safeguarding process and, you know, make sure that we can manage that risk. But once we've got that information, then we're in the best possible position to see what's next for that young person, to support them. Okay. And we do that by being very personal in schools. You know, I am Ste in schools. We dress quite casually with our I Listen t-shirt because I don't want to be Mr. Downward. We want to have that, build that relationships. And what we found is,
no white coats and ties.
No white coats and ties. No. So and some of these conversations that have led to you know, a young person divulging this information has been a chat about football in a common room. It could be a chat about, you know, what they had for tea last night. And once that builds and builds and builds, they feel comfortable. And then when they tell us that information, which is extremely courageous for them to do so, we've got that information and we're in place to help them with that.
Where do the parents fit into this, and the carers?
Well, parents, whether it's young people, parents, teachers, I think everyone obviously wants the best for these young people. I think with young people, as I said before, they come from very, very different backgrounds. We've done some educational sessions before. You know, we come from the position that we believe every parent is trying their best. But it comes back to that stigma, you know, there are parents that may think that, oh, we didn't have these issues back in my day, we just need to get on with it. And then we also have very concerning parents that obviously want that information but just don't know where to get it. So I think with parents, one of the things, and teachers, we're all trying to work together to have that more positive outcome, because obviously the young person gets that.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, a couple of things to sort of emphasise on what we've discussed over the last few minutes. One is the collaboration between the charities on the island. It is so important that we seem to be working together, and we do work together. I can give an example that last year ourselves in I'll Listen, we promoted a self-harm workshop for parents and carers of people who suffer from self-harm. We did it together, and it was a really useful and very beneficial workshop. That involved bringing somebody over from the UK who we in Samaritans had present to us at a conference. So that's an example of how the charities work together. And I think that needs to continue. We need to be seen that we're working together as a group.
I think the public need to know that charities aren't fighting each other and
absolutely not. No, absolutely.
Trying
There's
to poach.
This weird perception that we're out there fighting against each other, and I don't know where that comes from. That is not the case. We are here to work together to support the community. So, you know, we do that. Simple as we do that. A point that Juan made reference, and I think Juan's been brilliant this morning. He's been very brave in all the comments he said about his own situation, so well done for that, Juan. But he made reference to the medication that he's on. Medication is a help, it's a support, but it treats the symptoms, it's not the cure. You've got to get to the underlying problem, and by talking about what's going on, by talking about your mental health, by talking about the distress or the despair or the issues that you're dealing with, is so much part of it. And again, back to the judgmental aspect of it. The fear of talking to family and friends because you feel you're going to be judged, that means you bottle it up. You go inwards. Whereas talking to organisations like us, talking to Samaritans about how you're feeling, we're not going to judge. We're just going to listen. And it's so important that we do that. So,
it's been said, Mike, that emotions are like liquid, and if anybody's a physicist, you know you can't compress a liquid. It's one of the laws of physics. So you can't compress an emotion. It has to go somewhere.
Well, it's the old bucket analogy, isn't it? If you've got a bucket full of water and you keep adding water to it, it's eventually going to overflow. So unless you do something to release that stress, you've got to take the ability to overflow away from it, and by talking, that is part of the download. I use the expression quite a lot with Samaritans when I'm talking to callers, that they sometimes go on to download how they're feeling at that time, and that just brings the pressure down and it helps them move forward. And just one point, whilst I've got the mic before, because I can see the other guys have got their hands up wanting to speak. Something that we've done at Samaritans lately is that we've introduced an online chat service as well as the telephone, and this has proven really beneficial. And the youngsters of today who are used to dealing with online chat and WhatsApp and that sort of thing are finding it very useful. So it's just another avenue to explore.
Lynsey?
Just wanted to pick up what Mike said about, you know, that there is this misconception that all of the organisations on the island are all fighting each other for you know, working with young people and adults, and that's absolutely not the case, and Mike gave a great example there. And what I would say is no one organisation on the island can fix the island's mental health issues, and that's why it is so important that we collaborate, and we will regularly, if we aren't able to offer that support to a young person for whatever reason that might be, or to a family for whatever reason, if they're outside of our skill set, or if there is a specialist service that can offer the more appropriate support for that young person and their family, we will refer on. And that is the important thing. Nobody is an island, you know, we all need to work together to actually work in the best interest of the people that we serve.
Ali Vondi.
I'll Stand Up to Suicide has been in operation for just over 6 months now. We went live with our helpline, plug 80 30 40, 2 to 10 every day, but we went live on the 6th of October, and since then our sponsors have registered over 200 calls to that line. So the calls that we get from people, and I think it's about listening. We've talked a lot about listening and about hearing people, and the people who call us, and I'm sure you find this as well at the Samaritans, that people have lost hope. When they've lifted the phone, they've lost hope. They don't know what to do. They're in despair. And they just want somebody to say, I'm here for you. We cannot fix their problems. We're not in the business of fixing someone's problems. We can signpost them. We can offer them help. We can offer them counselling, all of those things, but we're not in the business of fixing people. Like June has said, everybody is in their own road to recovery, and sometimes it's a road of discovery. And so it's really important that if someone lifts a phone to us or someone lifts a phone to the Samaritans, that they understand that they will be listened to and they will be heard, because what they have to say is important and the situation they are in is important.
Ali, nobody's talked about older people and the elderly.
Yeah.
And of course, I'll listen, cope with youngsters, cope with school, but there are lots of terribly lonely, solitary older people on the Isle of Man. There are many women who perhaps came to the Isle of Man with a husband, and sadly the husband's passed on, and they find themselves trapped, imprisoned almost, in houses. What would you say to them?
You are absolutely right. In my day job, I did a lot of work with Isle of Man Live at Home during COVID, because there were a lot of older people who were exactly as you have described during COVID especially, and carrying on. And I think it's important that, you know, some of those people have lived through the war. They've been told they have to be resilient. They've been told that maybe they don't feel that they matter anymore because they've lived their lives. That is not true. Everybody matters. Everybody matters from birth to death, and you have a voice, and there are people there who will listen to you, and people there who care, and people there who want to listen and to offer you hope. And I think it's just really important that people feel that it doesn't matter what age, what status they are, who they are, where they are, that they can reach out and be heard.
Okay, Juan Moore, just tell us Manx PACT, if anybody wants to get in touch with Manx PACT.
Yeah, we're on Facebook and we've got a website, and we're quite happy for anyone to just join us, join in the conversations. If you're feeling too anxious, you're too nervous about your name appearing, you can do it anonymously, and otherwise just have a look at the articles that we post, because it's really important that you understand the problems that you've got. But more than that, it's also about people who haven't got mental health problems to understand as well. So we've talked a lot about people in my situation talking, but it's really important for people who are well to actually listen, and that's the key message that we've just been mentioned now. So everyone's got to listen. So if we go back to the whole purpose of next week, which is Mental Health Awareness Week, it's about other people being aware as well and thinking, right, okay, let's create an atmosphere where we can listen. And if someone says, I'm really not okay, don't judge them. Don't try and put thoughts into their head and try and answer for them. Just listen to what they do, and don't judge when they say something's gone wrong, because they might be just scratching the top of the surface of some of the issues, where the underlining ones may be incredibly more serious and they're just breaking the ice. I remember when I spoke to work at one point, This is my probably one and only attempt to speak out at work, and I said I wasn't sleeping. And 3 weeks later, I had to repeat that message to my boss, and I got an email back, and that was it. So it's all about listening, and especially for businesses, people at work who've got to take care of their staff, look after their staff, and if the staff are actually saying something, make sure you listen and don't ignore it, because that could then end up with something a lot worse.
Thanks, Stuart. Mike, what's the telephone number for Samaritans? How do people get in touch?
It's a free phone number, 116 123, and it does work on the Isle of Man. And we're available 24/7. And then the online chat, you go to the website samaritans.org.uk, and you can follow through the website to get to the online chat service.
Okay.
There's also an email service, joe@samaritans.org as well.
Ali, what's the contact number for Stand Up to Suicide? I'll Stand Up to Suicide.
It's also a free phone number, and it's 80 30 40.
Okay. And just a brief word about the FA again.
The FA are working on a very large people plan that will involve health and well-being, equality, diversity and inclusion, and very much, we will be posting a lot of things next week about Mental Health Awareness Week and the theme of movement and getting going for your mental health.
At what age will that kick in for football players?
Oh, from primary school right through to the leg ends. Right through to whatever age. If you can still walk, you can still play football.
That's the power of sport. Andrea Chambers, what's the telephone number if anybody wants to get in touch with I'll Listen?
So we are on 679118, and then we can put you through to whichever department, whichever part of the charity you need. And I know Steve would like to say something about mental health awareness.
No, I was just going to say, obviously we're on all social media channels. One of the channels we launched fairly recently was a TikTok account, because we wanted to really be able to understand and communicate with that demographic. And just over Mental Health Awareness Week, we obviously have lots of events going on. We're encouraging people to think about movement, whether it's for the week or for the month. One of the campaigns you'll see is around our heads, shoulders, knees and toes, which is obviously an old classic, but we've tied that in with, who can help you with your support, with your thoughts, who can, who's that shoulder to
Just go
lean
through
on.
that. So shoulder is shoulder to lean on.
Shoulder to lean on. Knees. I have to do the actions as well to remember this. Knees. Who's that person that you can have a bit of a knees up with? Who can support you and feel good? And toes. Who can give you that kick up the backside when you need that motivation or need that support? So it's there's obviously a serious message to it, but we want to have a little bit of fun with it. We've asked a lot of young people if they want to do their TikToks and be as creative as possible. And we've got our Mental Health Awareness Week pack, which is on our website for anyone who wants to get involved.
Website is
ilisten.im.
ilisten.im. Thanks also. I want to, and finally, let's go to Lynsey as well. We're talking about the schools. Are things getting better or worse, Lynsey?
I think it's probably plateaued. I don't think it's getting any better, and I don't think it's getting any worse. I think there are better aspects and perhaps less positive aspects. I think one of the real things that we are seeing is that schools are being more cautious and are trying to get as much support as they can for the young people, so that has got to be a massive positive. So they are reaching out to support networks, and because we're within a lot of the schools, we tend to be quite an early part of the sort of pointing people in the right direction. So,
well, thanks to our good friends at Ramsey Crookall today. We've been with Mike Nudd from the Samaritans, Ali Vondi from Isle of Man FA and I'll Stand Up to Suicide, Juan Moore from Manx Pact, and from I'll Listen, Lynsey Woods, you've heard, Steve Downward, and the Chief Exec, Andrea Chambers. This isn't the end, just the beginning. Next week is Mental Health Awareness Week. Thanks for being with us. Thanks to Howie Kane, Matty Cunningham and everybody else live in Castletown.